The Wire follows the drug trade of Baltimore from both the side of the cops looking to take down the drug crews and the kingpins looking to profit from the system. One of the primary drug kingpins in the show is Avon Barksdale, boss of the Barksdale organization, who ends up going to prison at the end of season 1, leaving his second-in-command Stringer Bell in charge. In season 2, Barksdale rival Proposition Joe, who runs the drug trade of East Side Baltimore, approaches Stringer with, well, a proposition, seeing as though Avon's drug supply is cut off and Joe has the best dope in the city. As he lacks territory, he and Stringer come to a deal where he offers Stringer a portion of the product in exchange for the right to deal in some Barksdale-controlled towers, in what is a pretty unprecedented move between the two rival factions. In season 3, Joe extends his share of supply to many of the other drug dealers of Baltimore, forming what becomes known as the New Day Co-op, an alliance between all the dealers where they limit violence, instead bringing grievances to the co-op so they can be sorted in a diplomatic fashion. Violence and killing brings the police, so by limiting violence, the Baltimore drug scene avoids unnecessary attention from the cops. But there's one big problem. The drug dealer Marlo Stanfield, relentless in his quest to become the king of Baltimore, both ruthless and merciless in his methods, has no interest in reducing the violence on the streets as he takes Barksdale Corners by force. Joe approaches him to join the co-op, but he couldn't care less and refuses. When Avon is released from prison, the violence escalates and erupts into an all-out war between Avon and Marlo. Eventually, Marlo gets lucky with Stringer selling out Avon to the cops just as the Barksdales had the drop on Marlo. With Avon out of the way, Marlo eats up more and more territory. It takes a long while and a little help from Omar for Prop Joe to get Marlo to join the co-op, but his methods still remain unruly and rash. As Joe says, "It ain't easy civilizing this motherfucker." But Marlo had higher goals, and after he learns all that is needed to learn from Joe, including learning where Joe gets his drug supply, he kills the old-timer and begins running the co-op, raising prices and even essentially disbanding the co-op meet. When it's all said and done, Marlo is brought in on conspiracy charges and is given an ultimatum by his lawyer to give up the crown and leave the game, allowing the more civilized members of the co-op to go back to business as usual. However, the question for today's video is, why did the co-op not just kill Marlo somewhere along the way? He was a problem for them for so long, what with all the violence in season 3, the refusal to join the co-op, his brutal methods in season 4, his killing of Joe, and his dictator-like rule of the co-op. These guys are gangsters towards the end where he ran the co-op and had the connect. Well, let's discuss all the possible scenarios. So first of all, if we start with when Marlo was up and coming, and even when he became an established powerhouse after the fall of the Barksdales, the co-op quite simply underestimated and misunderstood Marlo. Sure, it's easy in hindsight, with what we know how Marlo turned out, to say that Joe should have got someone to put a bullet in Marlo and be done with it. But in the beginning, he came off as one of many unruly drug dealers, and there were a lot of them. And remember how it took quite a bit of convincing throughout season 2 and 3 for something like the co-op to become a reality. The co-op simply underestimated his ambition and completely misunderstood his nature. Joe thought he was all business and money orientated, like him and the others, but Marlo was about rep, power and being the king. Funnily enough, you can make the argument that the only man who truly had Marlo worked out, who recognized him for what he was his nemesis Avon. Perhaps that's why he was so unmovable when it came to warring with Marlo and didn't listen to Stringer's pleas. He knew Stringer and Joe's business and diplomacy strategy would not work with a guy like Marlo. He's not that kind of animal, but they just couldn't see it. And even if the co-op were on board with killing Marlo, who's to say another gangster unwilling to join the co-op wouldn't take his place? As Avon says, there's always gonna be a Marlo. No Marlo, no game. One reason, the most obvious of which, is that it would always be beneficial, from the co-op's perspective, for Marlo to be a part of the crew. He could be an asset. He had terrific muscle. He had the power to clean up the streets, to make people disappear. So Joe obviously wanted the boy on his team. Marlo proved his worth as a co-op member when he ran off them New York boys. Joe thought he could civilize him, but he and the co-op were blinded, not seeing Marlo for what he was, preferring to live in a fantasy world with wanting this new peaceful order. They wanted it one way, but it's another way. You know, it's interesting. The cunning proposition Joe may have, in his Machiavellian sneaky way, actually on some level been pleased with the violence between Marlo and Avon, as he used it to undermine the Barksdales and Stringer Bell, even threatening to kick Stringer out of the co-op because he couldn't rein in Avon with the street violence. And the result of this was that Stringer gutted the Barksdale organization from the inside, even setting up Avon to go back into the can. This may have been an objective of Prop Joe all along, who was Avon's great rival, and with that, Marlo was nothing more than a tool for Joe, but like a Frankenstein, grew beyond Joe's control. Of course, another reason for not straight up killing Marlo is that it goes against the entire ethos of the co-op, with cooperation and peace being the name of the game. Killing Marlo would disprove the co-op, show that its goals were nothing more than wishful thinking, if after everything they still had to resort to violence. And anyway, if the co-op jump in and aid the Barksdales in killing Marlo, who takes over his territories after he goes down? Avon? Why would Joe want that? Avon shares more in common with Marlo than he does with the co-op. He could potentially be just as much of a nuisance for them as Marlo is. The co-op had an attitude of share and like, but this seems to only apply when it came to business and product, and was not extended to violence. When it came to action and internal violence, it seems the co-op had a more of a deal with it yourself policy, and the only time they banded together was with an outside threat, the New York boys. After all, Marlo was entitled to his corners as much as Avon, and it's noted the violence ramps up when Avon comes home, and he's much of a cause for it as the boy Marlo. If anything, Avon is encroaching on corners which now belong to Marlo, and he is causing unnecessary beef. So it's Avon who Joe wants Stringer to get to calm down and adopt the new ways. The whole point of the co-op is to avoid violence. Violence brings the cops. One of the first casualties in the war was a child, and the co-op went quiet after that. The Avon-Marlo conflict brings a lot of heat to the co-op, so why would they want to get wrapped up in all of that? Make it even worse by declaring war on Marlo. War uses money and resources. And who said they even have that? Maybe their best guys caught a nickel or went away and cleaned their whole act up. A point is made in Season 3 that good muscle is hard to come by. Even Avon had to outsource in Season 2 with brother Muzon, and ultimately the Avon-Marlo beef wasn't the co-op's fight. It was a war that was being fought on outdated principles, looking at it from their perspective. There was plenty of territory for everyone, and Marlo was a problem for only a few members of the co-op anyway. If everyone had to band together just to sort out a problem for a few, it would have forcibly stepped up everyone's obligations and set a precedent for the future. The East Side already had a problem with Walmart and couldn't afford to fight two wars simultaneously. And by the time Marlo did become a problem for the entire co-op, it was too late. He was already too powerful. Who wants to be the one to step up, to risk their territory and make an enemy out of Marlo, who might win the war with Avon and hold a subsequent grudge against you? If Avon Barksdale cannot win this war, what makes the co-op members think they can? At the time of the making of this video, there is a war going on between two nations, one of whom is part of NATO, and yet none of the NATO nations, much like the co-op, have stepped up and said they'll be the ones to join the fight, opting instead to stay out of it or make symbolic or small contributions. And by the end of the show, when something else, completely ruthless, Marlo being de facto dictator of the co-op may have been favourable rather than going to war with him. After all, the co-op were comfortable and not hurting, not until Marlo raised the price of the brick. Many of these guys were not even a while. That's part of the reason why Eastside had to reach out to Marlo in the first place with the New York boys. This guy is just too ruthless, and no one wants to be the one caught in his crosshairs if they decide to fight him. The game's still the game, just got more fierce, and the co-op were not hard enough to take on Marlo. He was the natural evolution of the violence of Baltimore, the end game, where codes and ethics didn't matter. You just had to be more ruthless than the man next to you to succeed. Plus, after he takes out Joe, you can't kill him. He was the only one with the Greek connect in the end. Sure, the Greeks would probably reach out to other gangsters in the events of Marlo's death, but the co-op didn't know that. They were in a position where they were firmly on Marlo's tit, as without him, they'd have no supply. So there you have it, my take on why the co-op chose not to try and kill Marlo, which initially seems quite an obvious thing to do. Why do you think they didn't take Marlo out? Let me know in the comments below, subscribe to the channel, and thanks for watching.